Intro. I'm rowing a boat here from Necromatid, and I'm not a complicated man. But what is a man? A miserable pile of secrets and impulses burdened by the weight of his own ego, but chained to it by a society that can only see him as a tool. Then what is a woman? A miserable clump of cells and hopes placed too high on a pedestal, trapped there by a society that infantilizes her even as it idolizes her. Is that all? The absolute limit of what can be said to be masculine and feminine? Or is any of that even necessarily true? And if it isn't, then what does it mean to be a man or woman? What is gender? Philosophy alone is an avenue to insanity, so I'll begin with the bedrock of all knowledge: science. Biologically speaking, sex is binary, down to the very DNA. From this, I can conclude that anyone with XY chromosomes is a valid man, regardless of their personality, appearances, actions, sexuality, beliefs. But that doesn't feel right, does it? Perhaps the problem is the word valid. What does it mean for something to be valid? What is a valid man? Valid can be defined as legally or officially accepted and based in logic or fact. Biologically speaking, a man has XY, so saying that biologically anyone with XY is a man is just a useless tautology, though logically there must be some other aspect to gender besides biology. Or does biology matter in the first place? Perhaps gender and biology have no correlation. No. The meat computer that is the brain sends signals via things like think sparks and think juices. The concept of the self is merely an over-evolved self-diagnostic system. You are you because you are a social creature, and your very personality is entirely dependent on which juices your brain is and isn't producing, and in what quantities. Is that my answer then? Gender is dependent only on gender hormones, dictated by DNA, and anyone with enough testosterone in their system is to be considered a man, despite all other traits. Unlikely. What does enough mean in this instance? Would there be a cutoff point? And even then, aren't I right back to biological reality? Earlier on, I used traits besides biology as questions to biology's supremacy. Those are the traits being personality, appearances, actions, sexuality, and beliefs. I know it's true that hormones like testosterone and estrogen are proven to directly affect the first three, meaning that any or all of those would fulfill that criteria of being more than just biology. And indeed, it would seem logical that they each play an important role in gender. I'll get to sexuality later, but what of beliefs? If someone believes that they are a man, then who am I to say that they are not? Perhaps I'm a society. Gender is supposedly a social construct after all, so then would it not follow that society gets to pick your gender? Then isn't it kind of society to have such a widespread catalog of exactly how it dictates and decides your gender? Huh. But that's not what happens, is it? Society on whole has criteria, but it cannot express them directly. Instead, the individuals that make up society are the ones creating gender guidelines, warped beyond usefulness by their own cultural norms. These are probably what you think of when you think of gender norms, right? A big, loud, smelly, macho man that can deadlift his own fancy cars and hates women but is always horny. Or a skinny but not quite skeletal, long-haired princess that never speaks higher than a whisper and is wholly unsexual with no opinions of her own. I answered as much when I asked at the start of the video, and it seemed wrong, but maybe that's all gender really is? No. As something of a society myself, I know that it isn't, and in fact I've gone to great lengths of trouble to speak to your society and compile its actual criteria. Men in general compete and provide. They are erratic and strong. They're hairy. Women in general nurture and sustain. They are composed and empathetic. They have boobs. There are others, obviously, distinct to the cultures they originate from, but these seem universal. Those more attentive among the viewers might be thinking this. Well, you're exactly right. These are overly broad generalizations, and importantly, none of them are mutually exclusive. The idea of family resemblance in philosophy is the idea that some things cannot be defined by strict, singular definitions, Instead are best characterized as members of a family that all resemble each other in some way. Like how there could never be an all-encompassing definition of a chair, but you know one when you see one. So men, in general, compete and provide, being erratic, strong, and hairy, while women, in general, nurture and sustain, being composed, empathetic, and buxom. Exhibiting feminine traits does not diminish manliness in any way, and also worth noting, lacking masculinity does not indicate femininity. Strength is manly, but this does not mean that weakness is womanly. While gender is binary, its expression has never been, because men and women are not opposites but natural complements. And according to this linguistic hypothesis of mine, society will treat you as whichever gender you most resemble, for better or worse. Hopefully, now we're all on the same page and we can begin to discuss the real issues, like shoving people into label boxes without their consent. Transgenderism, when gender and sex are in conflict. It exists. That's all science currently has to say on the matter. Some people online will tell you that some amount of the science is settled on it. They are wrong. Strictly speaking, the scientific community has been dragging its metaphorical feet on this issue, because real and eminently vulnerable people are involved. As a result, there is no real scientific consensus on just about any aspect of transgenderism other than its existence. Is it a mental disorder? Probably, according to all current definitions of disorder, but that's not exactly conclusive because those definitions are subject to change. Is it genetic? Probably not, but we can't say for sure. Is it caused by abuse? The correlation might exist, but depending on who you ask, and correlation isn't causation anyway. Is it caused by autism? The correlation undeniably exists, but causation has supposedly been ruled out. Is it your fault? No, that's not how that works. Is it a fetish? No, that's not the same thing. Are they born that way? We have no idea. And anyone who says they do is lying. What is the best method of treatment? So far it seems to be physical and social transition, but even that has a strikingly low success rate. What are the side effects of insert treatment method here? It's far, far, far too early to know, aside from the cancer, because some of them definitely do cause cancer. Please be safe. Don't be careless with your skin suit. You only get one, and it might not be as comfy as possible, but you only get one! And all minor improvements come at the risk of major fiasco. Conventional transgenderism lends credence to my hypothesis, as people who suffer from it take hormones to change their appearance and mannerisms, thereby altering their social standing and thus their gender. Moreover, if gender is indeed societally decided, it perfectly explains the common instinctive need that trans and even cisgender people feel to be accepted in their gender by others, especially in terms of attractiveness. Which brings us back to sexuality. Human sexuality is not binary. It's not a spectrum either. It's not even as complicated as hetero, homo, and bisexuality, those abrupt failures of categorization. Humans are attracted to traits, subconsciously or otherwise. They might be attracted to traits in combination or singularly, but any kind of attraction can always be distilled into traits. So people are attracted to masculine traits, and some people are attracted to feminine traits. These are separated into either heterosexual or homosexual, but the traits they're attracted to are indistinguishable. So the hetero-homo divide seems kind of illogical, in my opinion. The vast majority of people are attracted to some mixture of masculine and feminine traits, with one side or the other being a clear favorite. These are, for some reason, also considered straight or gay, just with more specific tastes. Some people are attracted to a more or less even split, and you might think these would be the bisexuals, but in actuality, sexuality has nothing to do with the traits you're attracted to and everything to do with the people that happen to display those traits. Say, for instance, if a man was only attracted to feminine traits, he could still be considered bisexual if he was attracted to a man that displayed those specific feminine traits. In this way, it can be concluded that traps are, at least, bisexual. Trait attraction is one of the reasons that I do personally believe in the usefulness of the sex-gender distinction, and consequently, none of my definitions, examples, and criterions from earlier included any allusion to genital reality. Strictly speaking, having a penis or vagina does make a person more manly or womanly, but I wanted to emphasize non-mutual exclusivity. I bring all this up here to note that unlike with the broader concept of societal gender norms, genitals, or indeed any singular trait or combination of traits, can make or break someone's attraction, as attraction is exclusively individual. The individual nature of attraction means that it is impossible to come up with an accurately representative method of categorization. Because of that, aside from the undeniable genetic baseline of man and woman, any specific trait sexuality-based gender norms will always be local and not representative of broader society. So, liking tomboys doesn't make someone less of a valid man. So logically, anyone who more closely resembles my listed male criterions than my female ones would be considered as a man, even if he occasionally dressed in drag and did the hula, or was only attracted to male traits, or even if he was born and raised as a woman. But then, wouldn't this mean that everyone is either a valid man or a valid woman? Is validity that prolific? Validity is and always will be a matter of cultural, social, and personal perspective. You could say what you want, but it fits my definitions. Isn't that just as overly vague as the biological reality-based definitions that I rejected before? No, because where those definitions entirely ignored edge cases as irrelevant, my definition specifically acknowledges and allows for them. Mine sees deviance from the norm as a natural consequence of human differences, an uncategorizable anomaly to be ignored. Speaking of things that aren't uncategorizable anomalies, it's finally time that I got to the real reason for this video. NB, NBs, non-binaries, queer-gendered semi-hemi-demi-sappho-pan-gloxuals. When society tells you that you are either a man or a woman, you will, as mentioned previously, obviously think of the stereotypes endemic to your culture or personal experiences. And statistically speaking, that's not a reflective of you, but just because you aren't a walking stereotype of a gender doesn't mean that you're not valid as a representative of that gender. There's simply no such thing as a non-binary or agendered person. There isn't any descriptive power to that kind of term, and the fact that some people thought there was is evidence that they never understood gender in the first place. Misunderstandings like gender fluid, which can only describe a magical fantasy where people can magically change their appearance and mannerisms completely by magic. 2S, which is a spiritual identity that has been retrofitted to comply with certain current narratives about gender. Androgynous appearances are one thing, but if your mannerisms are truly lacking any characteristics of either gender, you've got bigger problems than gender. Even rare genetic outliers like intersex people are recognizable as either men or women because of how they do or do not exemplify various other gendered criteria. Gray, non, demi, apora, whatevers are supposedly outside of gender, but if what they're feeling is outside of the currently understood realm of gender, then why would they call it a new gender? The genders themselves might be binary, but the people who embody them never have been. Everyone wants to be special. Some people need it, pathologically. Everyone wants to think that they're different, but difference necessitates situational superiority. Everyone feels one of a kind and unique from the people around them, but you don't need your own entire category that specifically applies only to you. You don't need your own individual gender with special pronouns to denote all your minute personality quirks and etch them into your personal identity forever, because there's already a word for each and every one of you that entails all of your exact personality quirks. Your name. By all means, please feel free to explore and document your current and future eccentricities. But do not attempt to categorize yourself separately from the people surrounding you. Do not become so complacent in your sense of self that you would emblazon it for all time on your own mind that this is how and what you are and you cannot be any other way. Please? Everything I've said here today has been a work of observing and explaining real-world phenomena. This isn't my opinion, it's just my explanation of the facts. If you want to dispute what I've said, all you need to do is come up with your own explanation for the problems and facts and ideas that I've raised. I want to be a good person. I want to have as many true beliefs as possible and as many logically coherent opinions as possible. I don't like being wrong. So if you think that I'm wrong, then I sincerely want to know why. Well, my animator quit and my girlfriend never, so I have neither means nor the inspiration to provide the quality and quantity of videos necessary to fully realize my New Year's resolution of total world domination. But with that having been said, I don't have a full-time job, so I'm lonely and bored and I really need to do something or I'm going to freak out. So the idea that I had was that you should be the ones making the videos. Because that'd be easier, funnier, and funner. Easier. But since it doesn't, I decided to go straight to the gift horse's mouth and ask you all what you want to see, keeping in mind that the goal of this channel is to explore a multitude of perspectives and also that I won't publish a video that I know for sure I'll eventually hate, which coincidentally is where I've been the past years-ish. So yeah, what kind of thing you want? Hit me up on Twitter, here's an outro for you.